Hello and welcome to our webinar entitled Product and Technology Delivery Management Best Practices Overview. There are still a few people joining us, but we want to be respectful for everyone's time, so let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us for the webinar today. And I have a couple of quick notes here before we dive in. So as we move through the webinar, everyone but the presenters will be on mute, but we do encourage you to send questions and comments using the chat function on your screen. We'll have a Q&A segment at the end of the webinar, and that's when all those questions and comments will be answered and discussed. Now, the point of these webinars is to be informative and educational in nature, so we have no intention on pivoting to some sales strategy here, but I would like to introduce our speakers to you. And give a brief overview about the sponsor of this webinar, TechGenies. Our presenters, who have a long history and wealth of knowledge in technology delivery and project management, also have a host of related technology experience that touches almost every industry vertical that you can imagine. Varun Sharma is our head of delivery practice, and Ryan Boverman is Chief Technology Officer at TechGenies. TechGenies is headquartered in Richardson, Texas, in the Innovation Corridor, just north of Dallas. We work with everyone from startups seeking end-to-end technology enablement to large enterprises looking to bridge critical skill gaps quickly and cost-effectively to mid-size operations looking for defined deliverables. And we develop custom solutions that are very unique, just as unique as the businesses they serve. So whether you need to augment your current IT staff, an entire team, or your organization may have some fixed deliverables, TechGenies has the skills and expertise to bring those wishes to life. Okay, so the agenda. What will we be discussing today? Well, we're going to give you a broad overview of the topic at hand. We'll talk specifically about project management, delivery management, and take a look at some key metrics and processes and some quality metrics. And then at the very end, we'll have our Q&A section, as I mentioned earlier. But now I have the privilege of handing this product and technology delivery management webinar over to our presenters. And with no further ado, I give you Ryan Boverman and Varun Sharma.
Thank you, Jonathan. You have the best radio voice, so I pale in comparison to your radio voice. I'm very jealous of it. Well, good to meet you, everyone. So I'm Ryan. I'm the CTO at TechGenies. Really delighted to do a webinar on this topic. When I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about the time of the year and how beautiful it is to do this topic this time of year, right? We've gone through the holidays, we've all eaten this rich, wonderful food, and then roll in the new year, and it's time to get back to some basics. Like let's get some basic, black eyed peas back in our system, and let's stabilize. And this is kind of how delivery and project management is. It is the basic blocking and tackling of running a software development shop or a product platform or a project. So, without due credence to this topic and this subject, right, we're kind of gambling with the outcome of any of your initiatives that you're trying to do. So with that, Varun, why don't you give us a quick intro of you and then we'll really start.
Sure. Very good morning to everyone, and thanks for joining this webinar. I'm Varun. I'm the head of delivery for TechGenies, and we are glad to have you here. So this webinar is gonna, discuss various aspects of project, product, and delivery management, and we'll be glad to take your queries at the end of the session.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's start here. Let's just rip this Band-Aid off. Most projects fail. That's not our opinion. That's pretty well documented in this day and age. You can almost go to any source in this industry and find out that most projects fail. And fail doesn't mean the whole project blows up in flames, right? Which we'll get to in this picture here in a second. But it could mean that the client didn't get the features they wanted, or what it costs triple, double more than any of us intended it to cost, right? There's lots of ways it can fail, but most projects really do fail and don't meet even near the feature set that the client actually wanted, right? So here's some numbers to quantify this. we're wasting about 97 million for every 1 billion per year, right? It's an astronomical number, and that's why we're really focused on this. Varun and I love and have a passion for this area just as much as we have a passion for, say, artificial intelligence or machine learning. But again, this is the basic blocking and tackling that gets us through a complex project. So I do want to spend some time on this hilarious graphic, right? Every time I look at it, I just laugh. But here we go. I'm going to start in this top left here. What the customer really wanted. Well, they wanted this swinging tire on a tree, right? Okay, that's easy, right? But here's how they explained it. There's this kind of ladder looking thing, not really looking like a tire, but it's a ladder looking thing, right? And then look at this next one. Here's how the vendor or the provider or the company documented this project. There's nothing there. There's not even a tree there. There's much less a swing or a ladder. So we're, within 3 squares, we're pretty messed up here. And then finally we gave it to some poor developer, and here's how he wrote it. He wrote, well, at least there's a tree again, but this swing is, it's not a tire. It's got one ladder rung on there and it's on the ground. So, okay, we're in deep trouble here, right? And then when we actually said, okay, we're finished, let's see, it's snowing now. It's not even the same season as when we started. There's a snowman in the background, so that makes somebody happy, I'm sure. But when it was delivered, we're a far cry from this tire. Right. And then when it came down to invoicing time, oh my gosh, now we've got a roller coaster. So it's like, wow, that's probably a little bit more expensive than the swinging tire. And then you can just see the whole thing goes in flames sometimes. And then we think about our disaster recovery plan, which is, hey, we just planted a whole new tree, but it's not even big enough to sustain a tire, much less this little ladder thing. So Varun, kind of walk us through some, how do we even get here? What happens to make all these?
Yeah, funny, exactly. Right? That's
the world too.
Exactly. That's a very interesting picture, So there are a lot of root causes, I think we need to find out a lot of root causes here. Okay. So I think the first root cause would be communication. So we see a lack of communication, in terms of the requirements which was shared with the team, with the vendor. Yeah, so how it was communicated, how the customer explained it to the vendor, I think that was the first root cause. So we could not write down the requirements, in a manner, and we couldn't get sign off on those requirements because there was no documentation available. So the next slide shows, the next picture shows how the project was documented. So we cannot see any documents here. We don't have any baselines here. So lack of communication, a lack of baselines, documentation, and definitely I do not see any iteration coming here. So there is no going back and getting feedback from the client. Had it been there, definitely this pictures would have been much better. So these are the 3 main root causes I see here. And then one more thing I would like to add here is, I don't think, any sort of reporting has been done in between any of the phases. So I think the executive team or the client or nobody knows about, what's happening in the project. So lack of visibility also is there. So otherwise they would have stepped in, and asked to replan or readjust the project or the product, So lack of visibility, reporting, communication, documentation. I see all of these as root causes here.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Let's keep talking about this area and
Sure. So a lot of so the reason we saw that figure 97 million projects fail. So there are a lot of reasons. So inaccurate scope definition or no detailed project plans. So we see a lot of projects which do not have scope defined at a very early stage in a project, and that's the reason the project plans do not they overrun the schedule, they overrun the time and the cost. Lack of visibility into resource, so we do not give sufficient time to the resources, to do all, to do all the tasks in time. So they are given some estimates, they're given some tasks, but we do not take into account the time they needed for bug fixing and quality, in getting the rework done, in getting the, doing the reviews for the peers. So we do not assign those number of hours to the resources. We do not do a lot of health project health checks, and there is a lot of documentation as we talked about in the previous slide.
Yeah, to add some color to this too. It's not that any one of these things are really hard to do. It just seems like we as a people just don't give the credence to these things, right? None of these are really that hard to do, but it's like, if I want my car to run, I got to maintain it sometimes, right? It'll work for a while without these kind of basic things that we're talking about, but to not do them at all, right? That's when we kind of have the tree in flames kind of situation.
Yeah, it's like doing a project health check. It's a very simple thing to have it done on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis. Just see where are we on the budget, are we on the schedule, timelines, are we reaching the milestones. But absence of those project health checks definitely that causes a very delay in the visibility of the correct status of the project to the stakeholders. So when they actually come to know about the status of the project, it is already delayed by X number of amount, and it's there is no way back. So, so this is very, very important, having project health checks and reviews done at a proper time in the project. Maybe it's sort of a project health audits.
Right.
Lack of risk management. Yes, we need to identify a risk, assess risk, prioritize risk, which risk need to be handled first. We need to give a ranking to the risk, and we need to have a proper mitigation plan for this risk, whether to avoid that risk or transfer that risk. So definitely that's an important practice. Have a template, have a risk register in place, and note down all the risk based on their rankings, priority, and the ones with the highest impact and probability. Try to get those one out of your queue. Try to mitigate those risks. So that's an important practice, which lacks some time in most of the projects.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go into project management itself. We've kind of been talking macro projects or portfolios. Let's talk about actual specific challenges that we see just in the project management field.
Okay. So one would be reviewing the existing projects against changing priorities and conditions. So it may happen in a more of an agile project. So there are a lot of changes coming in, a lot of priorities gets changed, a lot of backlog gets changed. So we have to be ready with those conditions. So we have to adapt to those conditions, and if you're not able to do that in a quick span of time, definitely that creates a problem in the long run. So we're not able to meet the goals and the milestones we have set up. Contract management, project procurement, yes, it's an important factor. We need to, that is something, which is for material, resources, tools, and software which we're using. So we have to have some sort of a setup, for contract management. Inability to achieve on time, budget, and expected quality of deliverables. So I think when we start a project, we should define our quality matrices. We should define our KPIs. What we need to achieve in this project. So I need to have my delivered defect density at this level, my defect removal efficiency at this level. I need to have these many bugs in my project, above which that's an alarm. I can raise an alarm on that. And if my schedule variance is more than 10%, 15%, or if my budget overruns more than 20%, what am I going to do? So what are my I would say stop losses? So at which point do I take it back to the executive team and ask them, or to my client or stakeholders, that this is a problem we are facing, and I think we should handle it right now before it gets too late. So those KPIs, those measures have to be established during the start of the project.
Beautiful.
Lack of buy-in due to digital or no project communication. Yes. So there is lack of if there is the communication plays a very important factor in any project. So you need to have right information gathered and right information shared across the right stakeholders, at an appropriate time. So if you do not share the project health status or project, dashboards, reports to the executive team stakeholders, who are the main decision-making authority of a project, or the sponsors of the project, they would not have sufficient time in their hand to act upon this project, to take decisions, which can be really beneficial, to readjust the timelines, readjust the scope or product, the cost of the project. So that communication plays a very important, vital factor here.
Yeah. Let's, to add some color here.
These are some of the challenges,
Yeah, I appreciate you walking us through all that. I think both of us have scars of these things, occurring in projects that we've been a part of, kind of going back to the contract management one. A lot of projects fail before they actually even start, right? So that's why we put it on this slide, to make sure that we know end to end what this project looks like and what it's going to take to get there, and the different roles and responsibilities. A lot of that is seated in a contract, and without that, it's just like we're rolling the dice hoping it's going to work out, and frequently it doesn't, right? That's why we're seeing $97 million a year being wasted on this stuff. Little to buy-in, no communication. I mean, I can't tell you how many executive meetings or board meetings I've been in where I've heard a phrase similar to the fact of, I didn't know we were doing that project, or when did that happen? Just that speaks to the, the upwards and downwards communication channels, but just, the clearly the leadership team is not bought into that project to support it, right? Because all of these things are probably solvable if we're even talking about it. And that's what the beauty of this delivery management, project management is. Okay, so let's go into a little bit definition of project management. We'll get to delivery management here in a second, but again, this is all the context of all that could go wrong and the cost thereof in terms of time and substantial dollar amounts. But in terms of project management, right, a project is, think of a singular project. It's temporary, that it has a start and an end, and therefore it has defined scope and resources to finish that project, right? And so it may not persist for all of time, or it might be a 5-year, 10-year project, right? Depending on the size and scale of it. But it is unique that it's not just a routine part of operations, right? That's when we see a platform or an application in production and it's a running state. We're talking about a project that's unique, and it will start and it will end. And at that point in time, it becomes much more operational and much less focused in terms of strict project management or strict delivery management. Though, with feature additions to platforms, especially in a product world, a lot of these things don't go away, but it just wanting to make sure we're talking about it, this standing up and standing down in terms of time. And then applying, there's skills, there's knowledge, there's tools and techniques to meet the actual project requirements, right? So that's what we're meaning in terms of project management. Varun, did you have any color on this slide you'd like to add?
Yeah, sure. So I would say, like, why we say it's unique or is it temporary? So normally, the ongoing operations are something, which goes along, and projects are projects is an endeavor which is done on a temporary basis, and it's very, very unique every time. And it is done whenever we have a market demand, customer need, or a business need. Any strategic opportunity or any technology advances. Needed in maybe a point-to-point architecture in a company, and they want to build an enterprise architecture. So that sort of a technology demand, or any legal requirements. Any regulatory requirements. That's the reason why the projects are done. So that's why we call them unique and temporary in nature. And just to summarize it, I would say, like, project it's done to create either a product or a service or a result. So these three are the outputs of a project. Like, it would be a product or a service or a result.
Perfect. Thank you. All righty. So I don't think we'll have time to go into every one of these areas, but here's some, oh, and by the way, PJM, I just didn't have much space for the word project management. So if you see PJM in this slide deck, it just means project management, right? It's talking about change. It's talking about scope. It's talking about time. It's talking about cost and quality. Certainly procurement. I guess, is there 2 or 3 key areas, Varun, that you really like to focus on in this field?
Yeah. So probably I can just maybe start with project integration management. It spans the entire process groups across the project. So we're going to come to the process groups in the next slide, but this integration management, like, it starts with project initiation, where the project charter or project management plan is created, and then we manage the project execution, control project work, perform integration control, and then close the project. So integration management is something which spans across the project. And then we have different areas like scope management, where we define the scope, create a work breakdown structure, verify or validate scope, time management, cost management, where we get the cost, we define the budget, perform earned value analysis, we perform our estimates, we administrate the changes, and we control the cost. So these are all PM knowledge areas. So I would say we have PM knowledge areas on the vertical axis, and then we'll have the process groups, which we're going to see in the next slide. That would be on the horizontal axis. So all of these PM knowledge areas would span across different process groups at different times. So we're going to come to that on the next slide.
Yep. All right. Well, let's go to that next slide. We've been teasing it a lot. So,
yeah,
all right. So this is getting a little bit scientific, which I think is great. This is where it really gets fun. So Varun, why don't you walk us through this one, and then I'll kind of add some commentary after that.
Sure. So process group, when I say project management process groups, so it can be said as a project management life cycle. Now, what's the difference? What's the difference between a project management life cycle and a project life cycle? A project can have different phases, so like requirements analysis, design, implementation, closing, and testing and closing. And every phase of a project will have these process groups. So every phase of a project will have this project management life cycle. Like, my requirements phase or my design phase will have all these elements. Like, design phase is like initiating a process, charting, planning a process, like planning, creating plan for those designs, executing those designs, controlling my scope, and then closing. So every phase of a project does have these process groups. So that's why these process groups are really important. Now for the project as a whole. So for the project as a whole, when we say these process groups, like initiating a process would mean developing a project charter, creating a project management plan, where we'll have the time scope defined and schedule done, durations kicked into the plan, and then executing that plan and really putting that into implementation, where we create, we do the coding, we do the testing, and then controlling those processes, where we check, whether we are on the right path. Are we delivering as per the milestones? Are we delivering as per the timelines? Are we overrunning the cost? So we have those controlling processes available there. So those are based on your KPIs set up in the beginning of the project. And then of course closing the process, like closing a project, after creating a product, which your customer wanted, getting a sign off from the client, putting your lessons learned, and if there is an overrun or a delay, then doing those causal analysis, Pareto analysis, or sort of things. So that's a closing part of the project.
Perfect. So I want to, the color I wanted to highlight here is I think most companies focus on one circle here, and that's executing the process without really any credence to what it takes to initiate it and stand it up, and then to really plan it through your charter. And definitely not a feedback loop for controlling processes, which speaks to a lot of the failures that we talked about several slides ago. And then how to really close down a process. I feel like most people only think that project management is this one circle, and hey, we get together and talk once a week and hopefully we're on track, and it's probably going to work out at the end of the day. So I feel like that's where most projects fail. So I come in and I rescue a lot of projects. I come in and rescue a lot of just, trying to get things back on the rails. And I cannot think of anything that was kind of on fire when I got there that did not give proper credence to all these other circles. So it is that serious, and that's why we're talking about it, spending the basic blocking and tackling again on why this is such a critical way to run a project. And I think it's just we just don't pay proper credence to doing the right things that we should do up front. Okay, so now let's jump into a little bit of delivery management. It's a different thing than project management. There is for sure some overlap, but certainly delivery management has been an evolving practice since probably portfolio and project management really started coming into focus. And I'd like to go through some of these circles, right? It's certainly it's dealing with agile and lean principles, which we love, right? There's a lot of lean manufacturing principles that apply perfectly into software development and product ownership. It's worried about the team health and happiness, and it's encompassing all of delivery from soup to nuts in terms of delivery. And it's a very strategic role where we talked about project management being very much about the one project. And sure, project managers are certainly capable of running a couple of projects in tandem, but a delivery management view and perspective is a very strategic role and encompassing a whole portfolio view. And it's worried about architecture, innovation, and analytics and staffing concerns, right? It's a higher level view of the world than what project management does. So Varun, I guess, can you take us through one or two of these that are really on your mind that you thought would be kind of cool to talk about?
Yeah. So I would say the core difference, when we talk about delivery management and project management, one focuses on output, whereas the other one focuses on outcome. So I would say project manager, he's the one who focuses on output, what output I'm getting, and the delivery manager is the one who will focus on outcome. So the project manager delivers, what would fit his project plan, whereas the delivery manager would deliver, what would fit the vision of the customer or the client. Right, so there is a symbolic difference. So one is working towards a fixed plan time scope, and one is working towards client satisfaction, the vision of the client, providing the right outcome to the client. So that's the basic difference we have between a project management and a delivery management. And yes, the delivery manager takes care of the agile and implementing agile and lean processes within a project. Keeping the morale of the team high, team health and happiness, aligning your project goals as per your organization strategy. So strategy, that's a very important role. Is my project, the outcome of my project, the result of my project, is it aligned to my organization's or my clients, organization strategy and goals? So those are the areas where the delivery management, comes into foray, and it takes a step ahead of project management, and you look into those aspects as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Yep. So if you wanted to, there's lots of people out there that want the definition of it, right? So delivery management it's a broader scale of project management. It's organizing, it's supervising people and process and technologies, and then combining that into a comprehensive plan. Probably for more than one project. More of a portfolio view of things. That eventually are driving everything in project managers included to successfully achieving whatever we're setting out to do. Varun, is there anything on this slide you'd like to add?
Well, I think it describes beautifully. Like it's a broader scale of project management. So project management, we can consider that as a subset of delivery management. So delivery management would definitely focus on project management as well, but it does focus on revenue, revenue, cost, client satisfaction, the process, agile lean practices, team health and happiness, other aspects as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, this poor guy, by the way, I've got a story here. We used to do stickies on the board all the time at a product company I was at until one company was doing deep cleaning and the cleaning crew wiped out all stickies we had, and half were on the floor, half were in the trash cans. Every time I see a guy at the board with stickies, I'm just like, oh gosh. Well, I love stickies, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It's just be careful of that cleaning crew. All right, so let's just contrast project management and delivery management. So again, the acronyms, PJM is project management, DM we're just doing delivery management for the sake of fitting things on a slide. But both are good. We're not here to say, project management's old school, don't do that. And delivery, that's what the cool kids do is delivery management. That's not what we're saying. We love both practices and both have their place. So project management, it drives decisions to overall execution of that project, tools, issues, metrics. Those are fantastic. Delivery management drives a strategic portfolio decisions and full commitments forward and thinks about revenue, budgets, costs, client satisfaction scores. There's 1,000 agile frameworks. Which ones should we use? We don't have to use just one, right? So Varun, anything in here you'd like to dabble with in terms of contrasting them? I know there is a lot of confusion about
yeah. I think you covered it beautifully, Ryan, but definitely, again, as I said earlier, the delivery management is a step ahead of project management where, it's focusing on the outcome and it's making sure that, the results are as per the vision of the client. He's just not focused on delivering as per the plan. The delivery manager steps in and makes sure that, client is satisfied at the end of the project. So that is something, really important as part of the delivery management practice,
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, wow, this is a big slide, but we wanted to give the audience a glimmer into, okay, there's a delivery manager role. What is all the things that they worry about day to day, week to week, month to month, right? And this is what, Varun, you're ahead of. So this is actually almost a job description in case we haven't talked about that before. This is what you do.
Yeah, exactly. So I can just cover a couple of them probably quickly. So it's all about building positive and productive relationships with the customer for business growth. So not just working towards a plan and making sure just if we meet the milestones and all. Definitely that's part of the job. But yes, building positive and productive working relationships, that's really important. Ensuring that the team maintains high level of competence and operational excellence, having those KPIs in place, those matrices in place, having those reported to the executive board team in a timely manner, to the customer stakeholders in a timely manner, and getting their feedback on the way ahead. So that is part of delivery management. Then it serves as a primary contact for customer inquiries and concerns, surely. Perform resource allocations, workload assignments according to delivery requirements. Yes, that's part of delivery and project both. Making critical business decisions to meet customer expectations. Yes, so the delivery management also interacts with the engineering team, to ensure that we do have the right technical capabilities within the team, and if there are new solutions which are needed, in terms of business or technology advance, so that is something we can take back to the client and then propose that to the client. So that's something, so delivery manager is focused on future prospects as well, providing the right solutions to the client, proposing right business needs, right, for providing right technical solutions. Perfect. Developing process improvements to achieve cost effectiveness and time. Yes, tracking all those matrices, controlling processes and monitoring the processes, whether everything is on track or not.
Perfect. So a couple that I love in this role, and that this is what I talk to Varun about almost every day, is the first one that's really different to me from a project manager is those client relationships, right? That it's not that project managers don't become friends with their clients. They do, but it's a different type of relationship that a delivery manager has than a project manager typically. Another one is a focus on operational excellence across practices, across developers, engineers, architecture, but through portfolios as well. It's very complex to do, to have your entire organization giving credence to operational excellence, but it really makes a difference in not burning $97 million a year. And then this is not all cases, but I tend to find that delivery managers make more decisions than do project managers. That's not in all companies. Varun, don't kill me for saying that, but there are organizations that project managers, they are not the decision makers. They escalate to the decision makers for when they're up against something they can't solve. But in my experience, delivery managers tend to make more decisions than do project managers. Again, that's not everybody so Varun doesn't kill me.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more area, they would help is, ranking the project initiatives. So within an organization, if you have n number of projects aligned to my strategy, my portfolio strategy, then, delivery manager would, interact with the stakeholders and help in the ranking of those project initiatives, and the ones with higher priority, higher ROI. So those are the ones, which would be embarked upon. So that is something all, with delivery managers take into account.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're sorry for all the boxes here, but it's a big role, and we wanted to get some flavor to it. All right, so a center of excellence strategic review. So what we're finding works best is to have an organization, whether it's a product company, a consulting firm, a Fortune 500, or even a small startup firm, right? Having a business center that drives these areas of program and project management, overall landscape, the platform management, governance, knowledge and skills management, and change management, right? These are the kind of the strategic areas to not allow ourselves to just assume everything's going to work out somehow, some way, and be overly optimistic that, my car is going to run forever, regardless if I do any maintenance to it, right? So, the center of excellence really is what Varun's group does at TechGenies anyway, right? So, we're counting on him globally, in a globally dispersed organization, different time zones, different languages, different thought processes. But what I'm expecting of this group is, this pretty good consistency, regardless of the project or client engagement that we're doing, right? So, looking for consistent delivery and excellence metrics. Our financial goals and expectations should be aligned and rolling up to a portfolio that we can manage. Doing strategic consulting partner reviews, right? Are we doing the right things, and are we profitable at those things? Not just one project. That's important, don't get me wrong, but I want to know if 50 projects are going well. And I want to know ultimately if our business strategy, we have a vision and we have a goal. Are all the projects and all the initiatives and all the people that we have, are we all working in harmony to ultimately get to what our vision are? And if we're not, what the heck are we doing here, right? So delivery management is a means to an end, and centralizing that around, the center of excellence is something that is near and dear to my heart. Varun, take us through some areas of this that are near and dear.
Yeah. Surely. So I think that's a great step. Having a COA in place. So having some standards practices in place. Which could be shared by multiple projects. So having some best practices in terms of project management, documentation, templates, which could be standard across all the projects in the organization. Suppose I have a change management template, or, if I have a statement of work, SOW project charter template, I think we should be consistent. All the projects in an organization should be consistent in using that template. So having a COA in place, definitely it's a great place, which can share the best practices to different projects in an organization. Then interacting with the different business units and setting up of KPIs, so what matrices they want, what are the key areas which they would like to measure, and have dashboards and reports in, which could be shared with the executive board team. So having those discussions with different business units, portfolios, and coming across those operational metrics and making sure those are shared at the right time with the leadership team, and then definitely it provides coaching area to all the PMs, in an organization, PMs, project leads, different stakeholders, having, giving them advice at the right times, if they're delayed in the project in terms of timelines or scope, so that's an area which would act as your governance area and which would help you also, in those times as well, when you need that advice and support.
Right.
So those are the basic areas, COE would really help in.
So talking more about this kind of centralized delivery mechanism, there's a cost for sure to doing these things, right? If I'm hearing a lot of the thoughts of probably the audience, right, there's certainly a cost of doing these things to not doing those things, but what is the cost of not knowing where you are as an organization, whether it's one project, 5 projects, your different maybe product teams, what is it costing you to not know this type of data about how you're actually performing, right? It's, so I wanted to give credence. There's actually a cost to doing this. I get that. But to me, the cost is way greater than not doing it, and I think the metrics that we went on the failing projects are painting that picture as well. $97 million, almost $1 billion that's the cost of not doing these things and really going at them with reckless abandon. So.
Exactly. So if there is an imperfect process, which is being followed in a project, definitely. So if we do have one centralized place, guiding the right practices and standards across the organization, so that would solve that purpose. We do not want to repeat the same mistakes. We don't want to have, imperfect processes flowing from one project to another. So, it provides us, a learning curve. So where, we all, the COE would make sure that the right practices, right standards are spread across all the multiple projects, and we do have a centralized tracking mechanism.
Right. Okay. All right. Let me do a time check here. We've got about 20 minutes left. Okay. Let's keep going. We've got, let's see, some more benefits. I want to get into the metrics too, but I wanted to leave about 5 minutes, you think, Jonathan, before we should get into questions?
That sounds just right.
Okay, so we'll go about 5 more minutes and then we'll just kind of stop at a quarter till the hour. All right, so another, just more benefits of centralized delivery, obviously visibility to a leadership team. It's impossible to go into executive and board meetings without this type of data. And if I don't have any kind of centralized delivery mechanism, the gathering of that data pretty much starts from the last quarterly review I had with either a board or executive team. But it takes literally maybe a day to consolidate data when a centralized delivery mechanism is in place, right? It's been quantified faster issue resolution and risk resolution, right? The project, something is going to fail in a project, right? Something's always going to go wrong. It's not if, it is when. And having the plumbing in place to deal with problems as they're coming up is really what this is all about to me, right? The lifeblood of any project is how fast you can resolve issues when they happen. I truly believe that. And that's a big part of this practice in my book, certainly. And then the assurance that we're aligning to any kind of business strategy, right? Again, going to vision and goal setting, and this is a great time of year because most companies are doing annual planning right now. How are we as professionals demonstrating to our executive team and boards that we're getting closer to their vision of what the company should be? Without these kind of metrics, we just have to hope for the most part versus actually demonstrating quantifiable data about all of our projects, how we're doing, and how our portfolio is moving in the direction of the vision of the company. All right, anything else, Varun, on this topic before we jump in?
No, I think you covered it all. Yeah.
All righty. Okay, so a lot of key metrics here. We're not going to go through all of these, but the next several slides we're going to deep dive into a couple of these that we thought were pretty interesting, but just, at a very broad picture here, what's our budget at completion, our planned value, earned value, actual costs versus what we thought it was going to cost, our schedule performance indicator, our cost performance indicators, right? These are, now we're getting down and dirty here in terms of the basic blocking and tackling, because here's how we're going to do it. But this is kind of what the art of this practice manifests itself. So let's go into a couple of these.
Sure.
Varun, let's talk about cost and schedule variance first.
Sure. So I'll take a minute. Can we go back to the previous slide?
I'll
just take a minute. Yeah, sorry. I'll take a minute to explain that, so why these matrices are important, so these are going to tell us, where we are exactly in our project. So maybe, project might be one year old, like after 3 months, you want to see like whether you are behind or ahead. So these matrices would give us an idea, what's my earned value in comparison to my planned value. So am I ahead of the schedule? Am I behind schedule? Am I over budget, under budget? So these are some key matrices in place, which would tell you the current state of your project and timelines. Plus, this is also going to help in your future predictions. So I can use these matrices and data to predict what would be my budget at completion. So when I complete my entire project, what would be my final budget? So it's going to exceed by 20%, 30%. What would be my time frame? What would be my schedule at the end of the project? So will I be 6 months behind, 3 months behind? So these are some important parameters, and matrices, which could provide a lot of insight to the executive team and board and help them making informed decisions at an early stage.
Perfect. All right, we just have a couple minutes, so we're going to go really fast.
Sure.
Sorry, but these are really good metrics too. This will be fun.
So probably, yeah, I'll go to the next one. Probably that's a bigger one.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is, so this matrix basically, it's a forecasting and prediction matrix. So if you see, like, we do have a planned value at a certain stage of time that, after 6 months, I'm going to achieve 40% of my work done, but my earned value says I achieved only 30%. So using that data, I can just fit into these matrices and, forecast what my project's forecast cost would be at the end of completion. What's my schedule going to be at the end of completion? So we can use CPI and SPI values over there. So I can quickly go through an example on the next slide, Ryan. I just take 30 seconds. Yeah. So just for an example, we had $1,000 budget to complete a project and a 12-week schedule. After 6 weeks, I want to find out, where am I in the project? So my plan value says, 55% of the project should be done after 6 weeks. But actually, we would able to complete only 35%. Right?
COVID happened, somebody got sick. I mean, something happened, right?
Something happened, maybe delay in hiring, or maybe scope got adjusted, delay in hiring, testing took long, maybe we got a lot of bugs. So X number of reasons can be behind this. So we were able to complete 35% of the task. Actual expenditure in completing that work was $480. So now my CPI comes out to be, which is earned value divided by the actual cost, is 0.73. And my SPI comes out to be 0.64, which is earned value divided by planned value. Now, value less than 1 means we are in trouble. So value of 0.73 here is showing that I'm over budget, and 0.64 is showing I'm behind schedule. Now, how do I use this value? I plug these values into my formula for estimated cost at completion, and I get a figure that, at the end of my project, this would be my final cost. So initially I started with a budget of $1,000, but I'm going to complete this project at $1,371, which is 37% over budget. Schedule would be 19 weeks. So initially I had 12 weeks, but now I would be completing it in 19 weeks. That means 7 weeks behind. So these are, these are key parameters which you're going to share with your leadership team, clients, stakeholders, and and get insights from them, feedback from them. What could we do to readjust our plan or schedule, or maybe do something else, to come back on track.
Right. Yeah. And I know from experience, talking again with executive teams or board, it's not that something changed or not that something went off the tracks, right? Because that's pretty much, it's going to happen, but quantifying exactly where you are gives the decision makers all the enablement that they really need to make the next decision. So this board team or exec team, I don't know what they would do with a budget that's over 37%. They might add people. They might say, well, let's just, the features stop here. There's a variety of things they could do, but that's not what's going to scare an executive team or a board or a project owner. What scares them is the lack of this knowledge. And then you're just kind of, it feels like it's the wind's blowing from the north today, so we should hire some people. That's the alternative to doing things like this. So great slide. All righty, we are at about time. There's some other slides on the cost of poor quality and how to get there, and really to demonstrate what the cost of poor quality is, reviewing what defect density is, and reviewing efficiencies. Which just basically shining more light into the unknown and making it known, because then we can actually make good quantified decisions on not fearing the unknown. And then just a closing thought here, right? Why do we even do this, right? Again, the $97 million is scary, but good business leaders create a vision, articulate that vision, passionately own that vision, but then relentlessly drive it to completion. Well, delivery management and project management, that's relentlessly driving something to completion. So that's why we do this. So all right, Jonathan, let's ask some questions. What do we have so far?
Well, we had some really good ones. I've had some good conversations in the private chat, and I appreciate that. So start with the first one. They ask, so what are the top 3 metrics in your opinions that I should ask my team for?
3 metrics. Do you want me to go back to
Okay.
that metric slide real quick? Or?
I mean, you might as well. I think it'd be a good way to illustrate the answer for them.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah. So in terms of quality, I would say, so we do, in terms of quality, we can have the delivered defect density, the review effectiveness, or my defect removal efficiency. So those are key matrices in terms of quality, which we can have, which I would expect from my team. And then in terms of my maintaining project schedules and tracking my project timelines, I would have schedule variance and effort variance, those matrices in place, which I would like to review on a monthly or a quarterly basis.
Perfect. For me, this is not on here, by the way, but it's a measurement on the issues list, right? The retirement of issues, right? To me, that's the lifeblood of a project. I'm not sure if the question was on a project or a portfolio perspective, but from a project perspective, the faster we're rolling over issues, the faster I know the project is going to get resolved faster. And then milestones, right? Are we meeting those milestones, which is exactly what Varun just talked about, just in different words.
Yeah, and then I would like to add here, like maybe if we following agile process, then definitely the velocity, burn down charts, we can add up on those matrices as well.
Yeah, you can do those. I guess we gave you more than 3. That was 3 or 5, but pretty good metrics if you can get your hands around those.
Okay. Well, speaking of agile, Varun, here's the next question. There's so many different agile frameworks. Is there one that works better than the others?
I can say, like, I can't say one works better than the other, but definitely, those are based on a sort of work which we have. So if it's going to be a really, we don't have a clear set of requirements, or we don't have a clear timelines defined, then I would prefer Kanban rather than sprints. Scrum, where Scrum it's like more of a time boxed event, where we do sprint planning and release planning, and Kanban is more of limiting the work in progress. So it depends upon your requirement, depends upon what timelines you have, what sort of complexity of the work we have. One more example I can give is like extreme programming, which is like more into engineering practices, and it focuses more on the coding side, and it takes changes even at the last minute. So that is something, if you're focused on more on engineering, coding, and delivering code at the earliest with a lot of changes, then you would choose extreme programming. So based on those decisions, we need to select the correct framework.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, it just depends on the situation. Is it a project? Is it a portfolio? Is it a product team? Is it a Fortune 500? And those are all great frameworks. Completely agree. I love Kanban as well for when we really don't know, because then we can put something on and it pops off, and we can change our priorities on a dime without a lot of ramification. For teams at scale, my favorite is SAFe, scaled agile framework. But that's takes a right size and a place to do that framework, but it speaks to portfolio, program, and then teams. And you end up doing something similar to Scrum or Kanban at the team level, but it gives credence to executive team and board teams and kind of a middle, like a director layer of management as well. Great question.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, so if you're doing projects with global teams, are there metrics to watch out for with special attention?
Great question. Yeah. With the challenge of global teams, that's right. It's time zone is one, cultural differences, language is one. There's a lot. It's got a whole lot more risk, but obviously it works pretty well. Lots of people do it well. It can go up in flames as well, just like an onshore project can. So I think this topic is much more relevant for a global team implementation than for an onshore type situation. For me personally, I think a lot of it is in the first question that we answered, the issue resolution, right? Because things are going to happen. How fast we can turn it around will tell you if we're having language problems or time zone problems or technique problems or just in the process as well. So to me, that's the number one indicator that I have a problem, or if I do have problems, how fast those problems are getting resolved. What do you think, Varun?
Absolutely, Brian. I would like to add one more here, like the resource utilization and capacity planning. So we are working globally, so we might have some shared resources. One person working in a project in Peru and another person working in a project in Lebanon. So having a capacity planning done and maintaining that resource utilization metrics, that would be an help to the delivery management practice. so we can take those decisions, how much percentage we can involve that resource into.
Yeah, and I would say, not having a project manager or delivery manager on a global project is just kind of you're kind of playing Russian roulette at that point in time, and you may get what you asked for, to not kind of give credence again to this practice, because there's that much more that could go wrong.
Absolutely. So here's a really interesting question. So why do some projects fail even after implementing best practices and frameworks?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of I think the reasons which we discussed, in the early slides as well. So there are a lot of common reasons here as well. So a couple of them I would like to highlight is lack of visibility of the project to the executive team and stakeholder team. So most of the decision makers in the project, they come to know about the issues in the project or the delays in the project at a very later stage. So I would say the lack of visibility takes priority for me. Even if you have the best framework available, if you have the best tools and processes, but you're not able to report it to your board team at the right time, so they will not be able to take informed decisions. So I think that's a primary factor. Then probably right allocation of resources. So we need to make sure that our resources are not over allocated, or maybe they're overshared within multiple projects. So if we are giving them some estimates, we are giving them some milestones and targets, we need to make sure they do have the right amount of time to complete that work. So sometimes it happens in a big organization and working globally that the resources might get over allocated or overshared, without looking into those aspects. So that is another area. And then yes, last one would be lack of communication. So lack of communication flow between the different stakeholders. So that's also very important.
Great answers. Completely agree with all of those. I mentioned this when we were on the slide, but a lot of projects fail here in initiation. So, that we might not have gotten real serious about this till one of these other circles, and it might be too late. I'm not trying to scare anyone off, but, if we're 3 iterations in on the executing process and we really didn't give credence before to planning process or initiating it well, it might be too late before it even really got started, if that makes sense. So I've seen that lots of times over and over. It doesn't mean it's not salvageable, but it might be over before it starts in a lot of places. And then the lack of buy-in with little to no project communication, right? Again, it's this snowball effect, right? If we're not getting those metrics up front and making the good decisions to write the course at the time something's going off the rails, it's that much more expensive to start turning that giant ship back in the direction, which could ultimately lead to failure as well. That's a fun question.
Yeah, it's really good. So I have a couple more questions here, but before I get to the one that's project manager versus delivery manager, which is a great question, I just want to ask something that will provide a little color for that answer. So this one, in terms of good product process, what would you say are some of the top metrics a product owner would use that's different from a project manager or a delivery manager?
That's a fun question too. Yeah, we didn't really talk about the product process in here that much. We spoke to it, right? This is kind of meant to be an overall view, but we could literally spend another hour on what good product process is, right? There's, before a developer even writes one line of code, there's been 10 steps upstream to make sure that, this is something that a client actually wants. The first rule in my book for good product processes, check your egos at the door, right? Just because you're the product owner or the project manager or the best developer or the best architect on the entire team, it doesn't mean you know what the client actually wants, right? So that's getting metrics around that, about what the client actually said they need and why they need it, and then proving that out in the marketplace, right? There's metrics around all those things. That's what I would want to see in a good product process, to know that it started out right. And usually when you start something right, the rest kind of falls into line. So how about you, Varun? What's your thoughts around that one?
Exactly. And I think you answered it pretty well. And then, of course, like one metrics which clients also track, after the product, maybe the MVP goes live, what's the churning rate, what's the retention rate, what's my conversion rate, so those are some of the metrics, in terms of product, which are being, tracked by the client.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there's a lot of great just SaaS company metrics, or anyone can do a Google on that. Just look at what's the 10 best SaaS company metrics. Any of those are gold. They really are.
Right. Absolutely.
That's perfect. Even better, this is going to play in so perfectly with the next question. So this person says, as an executive at a software company, should I hire a project manager or a delivery manager? After this talk, I'm not as sure as I was before.
Well, you might need both. It's interesting. Call me or email me. Let's talk about it. I'm more than happy to debate that with you, because there's no one size fits all to that answer. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you a product company? Are you kind of a department in a bigger company? I would need to know some of those things to give you great advice. I can tell you more often than not, I'm hiring delivery managers these days. And delivery managers, once they're coming on board with the things they're doing and looking at, they're tending to recommend to me when the right time to get a project manager is. So I don't know if that helps, but definitely feel free to email me and call me, and let's talk about it. Varun, what do you think about the answer to that question?
Sure. So we are very open to answer that question. So definitely we would appreciate getting those emails and having those discussions on board.
Excellent.
The worst thing we can do is not hire either. That is so
there's an option. So actually, those answers play perfectly into the last question that I have here. And it says, since both project and delivery managers don't micromanage projects, what's the best hierarchy that makes both utilize their time and efficiency to the maximum?
I don't know. Can you read that again? Somehow I did not follow this one.
Sure. So since both project and delivery managers don't micromanage projects, is there a particular hierarchy that helps them both utilize their time and efficiency in a great way?
Well, I guess
absolutely.
You want to go first, Varun, and then I'll go second.
Sure. I'll just add one point here. I do think delivery manager does just comes in hierarchy, just one step ahead of project management. So a project management would be a subset of delivery management. But yes, I do think project manager is the one responsible for even micromanaging project and then making sure that the project meets the timelines and cost.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of my initial reaction too. The original premise, I'm not sure I agree with, but I don't know the context either. So I do think a project manager and delivery manager can, certainly more project manager, micromanage the project, right? They should know every nook and cranny, certainly to any issue that's in the way of that project getting accomplished. And then delivery manager would be the forerunner and being, at least one step ahead, hopefully 5 steps ahead on not even getting us there to get it back in the right frame. So I assure you, I'm expecting both roles to micromanage a project if it's not going perfectly, and being as knee deep as they need to be to figure out whatever issues are in the way of getting to that project to production. But yeah, email me. I'd like to hear more. I'd love to have a conversation with you, whoever wrote that question, and jam more about it. I'd like to hear a little bit more so I could probably articulate a better, or at least give an opinion on what I think about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for presenting this webinar to us and sharing this information with us and answering all these great questions. And thank you to everyone who attended and engaged with us and stuck around. We really appreciate you and your time, and we're looking forward to the next one.
All righty.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.